Thank you, everybody. And then, on behalf of the Forever Intelligent Network, I want to welcome you to today's edition of the beautiful Forever Intelligent Conversation. Like we often say, this is where we share the world's most compelling stories about human intelligence based on the masterpiece concept of strike. We have a lot to cover today, and we are going to go ahead and just run through everything that we have at least on our agenda to be able to cover with you today. So give us a second here. Check in on a coverage plan with you. Thank you to all of you who are joining us. Let's set up our channels here and have everybody connected. So we can share with you everything that we are going to cover up today. And we want to wait for all of our channels to connect. Once we have all of our channels connected and everybody it's here, we'll share with you what we're gonna cover today on the beautiful forever intelligent conversation. We are absolutely sorry that we have had some challenges with working on planning, and we have not been able to bring this show every 2 weeks. So we are working on the production and everything else, and we'll be able to get back to bringing the show live every 2 weeks. Yeah, let's have all of our channels to connect here, and then we'll talk about our outlook for today on everything that we will be covering. All right, 3 out of 5 of our channels are connected. Let's go ahead and be able to talk about what we're going to focus on to share with you for the next couple of minutes. All right. Yeah. Once again, welcome to all of you who are joining us. Like we often share with you, this is where we share the world's most compelling stories about human intelligence based on the masterpiece concept of strike. And I wanted to welcome you to this edition of the Beautiful Forever Intelligent Conversation. Today, we have a lot of things to cover, and let's start by going over all of the things that we'll cover on today's broadcast. All right, for those of you who are following us live, thank you so much. A lot of you are following us live on Facebook, on YouTube, and other places. Thank you for everything you're doing. Let's go ahead and talk about all of the things that we'll cover in today's conversation. We are going to lead today's conversation on some critical issues from Africa and then obviously to globally. And then we'll be back in the United States, obviously, to talk about the Forever Intelligent Annual Conference. So, first on our agenda today, we will talk a little bit about Zambia's education law. That is very important. The For those of you who know, we've built everything we've built focusing on education development, and we take great pride in understanding critical education development across nations, especially when it comes to revolutionizing educational approach. Um, so we want to talk about few things today, and we'll begin our conversation today on Zambia's education policy that became an education law, and then we will also talk about the African Union migration challenges. It's very important for our conversation today. And then we will talk about the fourth annual Forever Intelligent conference that's coming up. And then the last part of our conversation, which is absolutely critical, we will deal with France, Africa Outlook. So, for those of you who are joining us, we want to welcome all of you to the beautiful Forever Intelligent conversation. And we want you to go ahead and connect, share, invite people to come along and watch the beautiful Forever Intelligent conversation with you. We will give few people a chance to just look at what the outlook is for today, and then we'll move ahead to start our conversation. All right. So going from discussing the education law in Zambia to the African Union, and then the fourth annual Forever Intelligent Book Conference, and then eventually talking about France's engagement in Africa is something that these are absolutely important conversation driving development not only on the continent but in critical places. And we want to welcome all of you. Want to welcome all of you who are connecting with us. And for those of you who are connecting with us, we want to ask you to please go ahead, connect someone else to get involved in the conversation and be able to share the broadcast and connect with somebody to be involved. So these are the things that we're going to cover on today's edition of the Beautiful Forever Intelligent Conversation. So we will begin by just starting with the Zambia education system. For those of you who follow the Forever Intelligent Network, you know we will get back to the conversation on the beauty of why we have prioritized education in a very critical way. And we want to go to a very powerful story today in Africa that supports a lot of what we have been doing. So what we're going to cover is the Zambia education system. For many of you who already know this, it's fine. But for a lot of people who don't know this, um, Zambia as a country in Africa gained their independence somewhere in 1964. And when they gained their independence in 1964, there were several critical challenges in the education system. And this is not something that many people will highlight or many people will be interested in seriously highlighting in this country. But we looked at transformational education systems, and we look at strives and critical trials and things that people are working on across the globe. And the Zambia education system represents an important point for us today in our conversation. So originally what happened is when the new president of Zambia took over, this president argued aggressively for education development. And I think there was an absolute desire to be able to make education a priority nationally. And many people then question this approach. Okay. So, but what we've seen in Zambia so far, it's a critical move that has demonstrated some level of possibility when people take this step to be brave enough. So, the forever intelligent conversation, when we pick up critical conversations, we pick up these conversations in a way that are vital for the transformation of human development. So, we Zambia used to have an education policy, from an executive level that required free education for all those attending public institutions. And then quite recently, that policy was transformed into law through the parliament. And looking into the depths of that, it's something that we just want to cover on this conversation, this first segment of our conversation here for you to know. So what happened is that the government in Zambia had a serious argument with the rest of the opposition politicians and everybody in the country. And the argument was that how can we not make universal education, like people have been arguing in the United States and other parts of the world for healthcare? How can we not make universal education a fundamental right for everybody? So the government of Zambia had argued that universal education was indeed absolutely critical to doing several things in the economy. And this is important because We are talking about a country that really does not have the resources to support this entirely, especially when it comes to the fundings that we need to make sure that every sector of this works, or when it comes to the infrastructure, or when it comes to the leadership and maybe professional intelligence that is required to make this work. But a country taking the initiative from nowhere and stepping up and making sure that this is absolutely something that they want to do. This is very important for our conversation today. So we've seen what the argument was from the Zambian government. Okay. All right. So I know there were three cardinal issues that the government argued. The government argued that if we move to transform the policy into a law, here's what we want to achieve. We want to achieve access, we want to achieve quality, we want to achieve equity. These are the things they dealt with in most of the engagements across the country. We want to make sure that our people have access to education, and then they can also, through the access, be able to achieve quality education. And then through achieving quality education, we can provide equity in a way that is supportive for everybody else. So on the screen, you see there's a lot of other things that people have been using to promote the initiative across Zambia. And the argument has been, what is this going to provide for all of us? Opportunity, a strong economy, reduce poverty, better future, healthier society, peace, and unity. If our government can be able to engage and support us in a situation that creates a universal free education for all of those in public schools, look at the things that could happen. And the most important thing that we took in this conversation that we basically wanted to share here for a lot of people while we still on Zambia is the why does it matter? You know, we listened to several different politicians in Zambia, but most importantly, the highlight of the conversation became they said if they consider education as a fundamental pillar to transform the nation, then the idea of public education didn't really have to matter or to be associated with what a family income is. That I can educate my child based on how financially sustainable I am or not. They said there should become a situation that we can educate children all across this country based on a national government initiative. That's what the government decided. And this is absolutely important. This is absolutely important. The government made a decision now saying that families are poor, kids are dropping out of school. We have absolutely no way to be able to mobilize our entire nation to make a decision to support their children to be involved in education. So we have to make a decision that says, is it school or food? Is it, future professional development, or basically taking care of your family and friends economically in the moment? So a lot of these things were happening. And when we took on the review of the Zambian policy, it was absolutely critical. A lot of people were asking a question, and this was important to me because we needed to be able to ensure that we capture a lot of things. So the government of Zambia, like I said, had listed critical issues: access, quality, and equity, key. But putting that across the whole system, talked about things like opportunity, stronger economy, reduced poverty, better future, healthier society, and now people across society have overlooked education. And education is not just formal, because many of the things that we've seen as coming out of this conversation, that many times when people talk about education, a lot of people be like, is it only formal education? No, you have to know something to do something. And with what the government of Zambia has done, they've moved to create an opportunity to ensure that yes, free education is possible despite the challenges, funding challenges. Now, so Zambia as a country has demonstrated that public funding for education in Africa is possible. That's what they've done. And this is a very important perspective that we all have to look at and see. Because in the end, that's the question that people are asking. And so this initiative coming from a policy to being acted into law through the national budget in Zambia is funded in a way that you know, teacher salary, schools initiative, educational investment plans, everything is publicly funded. So, by the way, when government create other economic revenue to generate, other economic means to generate revenue, this will be translated into other means that support the diversification of money that comes in from other different aspects to support this. But the government had argued that since educational development is fundamental to our economic transformation, this should not be based on what a family can afford. We should be able to give all of our citizens, the chance to make this work. That's the argument. That's the argument. Let's give all of our citizens the chance to make this work. That is not an easy argument. And this is what the president of Gambia has taken the charge to lead. And while other people are arguing, this is possible. Because the last thing we want to share on this before we move to start talking about our next conversation, for those of you who've been following, welcome to the Forever Intelligent Conversation. This is where we say we share the world's most compelling stories about human intelligence based on the masterpiece concept of Craig. What other people have been arguing is the idea that, okay, funding, affordability, readiness, things don't always have to be prepared. Sometimes you start, you move, you engage, and you make it work. That's critical. That's what the president did. That's what he did. So, before we move to the other issue on our key conversation today, the African migration challenges, last thing we want to share on Gambia is, look, the president may not be there forever, but other leaders will come. And for me, I've shared with people and I've talked about this on a number of different conversations. African leaders should not see the idea of leaving power as a failure. No. When you leave power, you have the opportunity to do a lot of different things, especially in a stabilized democracy. And this is why we should fight to stabilize our democracies across Africa, because you leave power, you have the chance to do a lot of things. Until we wait for that one glorious African Union, you leave power, you have the chance to do a lot of things. You have the chance to influence policy decisions. You have the chance to make a difference. So don't worry about that too much. Okay. So when we get to the point where We leave power peacefully, and we've laid the foundation for what real development and transformation looks like. We don't have to war. We don't have to war. This is absolutely important. We don't have to war because what happens then is that the institutional framework we've built will lead to creating whatever is it that we have desired. Okay. So we want to congratulate the people of Zambia, most importantly, the leadership right now. That the leadership has taken on this bold initiative, and other African countries will continue to learn from it. Your challenges, your struggles, everything you go through right now, and your successes will be a lesson for the continent at large. Thank you for taking on this step. The other thing we want to talk about that is critical today, it's basically this: the African migration challenge. And this is absolutely important for our conversation today. So, for all of you who are watching, we've spent some time, just wanted to share some critical issues on this. This is important for our conversation because as a continent, we have had to deal with this a lot. And for many people who don't know, they probably just think that this is today's issue. But the African migration crisis has been something for ages. And the conversation around how we have to handle this is critical. And something that I wanted to share is that we have to begin to rethink ways to support initiative that not only leaves this as a burden on government, but the people on the continent can take this up. This, for me particularly, is where I was coming from, you know. And if you're looking at our screen right now, there are some things here that we have to share with you that are absolutely important. You this is from 1990 all the way to 2020. We're doing an analysis of just migration within and from Africa, right? So if you just look at the greater statistics, what it shows here is that 48% of people between 1990 and 2020 have migrated just within Africa, and about 45% of people have migrated outside of Africa. And then 4% of people have, gone to Africa. The key challenge here is we have economic, social, political circumstances that are affecting how we effectively deal with migration in Africa. And what we've come to analyze sometimes doesn't always represent everything that constitute all of the challenges that are taken. But we've made some intentional effort, some absolutely intentional effort to ensure that we can present some statistics. So what they show is that the majority of African people are moving across Africa and staying within Africa and trying to find a way to engage in getting to understand cultural integration and differences and all of the things in Africa with the African people. So the African Union must now begin to rethink ways that they can absolutely put this on the agenda as a means to talk about Africa's integration. Because when we give the chance to our people, when we give the chance to our people, to work with themselves, to integrate themselves, to learn from each other. We building a system that supports individual led change. We've all seen what has happened from the xenophobic situation in South Africa, and everything that has happened so far will lead to Africans being mad at South Africans. But we have to have a conversation and to help them understand the South African economy is still struggling, especially for predominantly black people out of job. But that does not mean as African we should take on the initiative to do this to other Africans. And this is where the conversation matters. Because what we need to do, look at the migration statistics from 1990 to 2020. As a continent, we have to work on creating opportunities to support what's happening here with our people moving around the continent. These are data that support factual engagement of people. And if we don't do these things, it will be critical for us. So for me, we need the African Union to take this up as an agenda and work to ensure that better policies and programs can be put in place to support migration across Africa and not wait for nobody anymore. This is important. We can't just blame South Africa alone for the challenges. Yes, South Africa may be, one of the biggest economies in Africa, but they have their own challenges. And some of the people there may be confronted in a way that we do not know. But this is what we need to work on. We want to go back here to say thank you to all of you who are joining us live. Like we said, this is the Forever Intelligent Conversation. This is where we share the world's most compelling stories about human intelligence based on the masterpiece concept of Shrek. I want to say a big thank you to all of you who are joining us live right now, and those of you who are connecting and sharing the broadcast. We appreciate it. We have few more conversations to cover here. The fourth annual conference in France's engagement in Africa, and we're gonna work with all of our team here to work on covering that here shortly. But we're gonna go ahead and take a quick break, and then after our break, we'll be back for our conversation. All right. For those of you who haven't had a chance to join the beautiful Fire Intelligent Conversation, thank you so much and welcome to this edition. This is where we say we share the world's most compelling stories about human intelligence based on the masterpiece concept of Scrag. What we want to share with you now is we are going to have the beautiful Forever Intelligent annual conference, and this conference focuses on education, technology, and leadership development. For those of you who've watched a number of the things we've done here on the Forever Intelligent Conference, you know that the conference brings together leaders in different variety of fields to be able to work on defining and creating important solutions in three key areas: education, technology, and leadership development. And we will be having a conference this year from July 31st to August 1st. And we look forward to seeing a number of you, please, joining in and getting involved through the Forever Intelligent Network in Denver, Colorado. The last conversation we want to focus on before we move towards wrapping up our show, since we know that we have about 8 more minutes here, is to talk a little bit about France in Africa. And we'll talk about this conversation more extensively in some other segments. But France has been a critical part of leading African development initiative, especially when it comes to multilateral and all the different engagements we've seen across Africa. But here's the statistics that's quick enough for all of us to take a look at. We've seen that it's from 2022 moving on. France basically has exported things to China, United States, and we know basically um, the United States is a key partner for France in more ways. But there are a lot of things that when we defining an approach to continental development in Africa that we should look forward to. The institutional capability must exist for partners to be able to deal with you not just on a handout level, but on the partnership level. And we've had circumstances where the institutional resources have not been in existence to support the kind of things that are required for that integral partnership and developmental level in Africa. So when we talk about what France is, like I said, when we get on our next segment, that this will be absolutely critical. But today we just show a basic statistics of in the last 2, 3, 4 years, where is France sending a lot of the export, despite of the conversation? For those of us who know, France's biggest promise of investment in Africa right now has been the forward thinking conference that was held in Kenya when they promised like 23 billion. But we have some other investment in Africa that are even bigger than that right now. We can talk about an oil refinery by Dangote that's leading efforts. So we have to restructure our approach on how we deal with developmental issues. And when we hand on the opportunity to be able to redefine what an African development looks like, it becomes a critical challenge for all of us. So, in subsequent segments, when we're back on a beautiful, forever intelligent conversation, I look forward to sharing with you more critical issues. Until then, I want to thank all of you who joined us today, and I want to say I appreciate you being on the beautiful, forever intelligent conversation. I'll talk to you later. Thank you and see you.